You'll take the folding chair, Mom? The good ones are for our actual guests. My daughter-in-law said it while she was arranging place cards, not even looking up, the way you tell a waiter you wanted no ice. We were in the private back room of the steakhouse my son had booked for his 40th birthday, a room with low gold lighting and a long table set for 18, and for a second I genuinely thought I'd misheard her over the clink of glasses and the piano drifting in from the bar. "I'm sorry," I said. She finally glanced at me. She didn't look embarrassed. She slid a card down the table and smoothed the front of her dress. A navy thing with a designer label I happen to know cost more than my first car. "There's just not room at the main table," she said. "We're tight on seating. You'll be more comfortable by the window anyway." By the window? There was one chair there. A folding chair. The metal kind they bring out of a closet, set slightly apart from the long table where everyone else would be laughing and passing the bread. I'm Margaret, though everybody who watches me knows me as Nan. And I have to stop here for a second, because when this happened to me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, something quieter and older than that. Tell me honestly, how many of you have been treated like furniture in your own family once they decided you weren't useful anymore? Stay with me, because what happened next surprised even me. I'm 68. I am not a fragile woman. I ran a dental practice for 31 years, signed the payroll for 9 employees every other Friday, fired a man once for stealing nitrous oxide, and didn't lose a wink of sleep over it. I have argued with insurance adjusters who assumed a small gray-haired woman wouldn't notice them shaving a zero off a claim. I do not cry easily, but standing in that gold-lit room, holding the little place card she'd handed me, my name in someone else's handwriting, set off to the side, I felt the air go thin. The room had been booked under my visa. The steaks, the wine pairings, the 2 bottles of Camus my son had pointed at on the menu and said, "Let's do it," without checking a price, the cake coming later with the sparklers. All of it sitting on my card, the way so many things had quietly sat on my card for the better part of a decade. My son came over while I was still holding the place card. Brett. 40 years old now, and a blazer I'd watched him buy on my account at Nordstrom in March. He has his father's easy smile, the kind that makes you want to believe whatever comes after it. "Mom, don't make it weird," he said under his breath, with a little laugh so the people nearby would think we were sharing something warm. "It's one dinner. Sit wherever. What does it matter? What does it matter? What does it matter?" I looked down at the folding chair by the window, then back at the long table where my daughter-in-law, Renee, was now seating her own mother in the center, in the good upholstered chair, fussing over whether the older woman had a clear view of the room. Her mother got the center seat. I got the closet chair. And there it was, the whole thing, laid out as plain as the silverware. I should tell you how we got here, because a folding chair by itself is nothing. People have bad nights, hosts run out of seats. If that were all it was, I'd have shrugged and sat down, and you'd never be hearing this story. But it wasn't all it was. It was the last item in a very long account. 3 years ago, when Brett's startup, some app for restaurant scheduling, I never fully understood it, ran out of runway. He came to my kitchen on a Tuesday with that same easy smile and asked if I could bridge a gap. The gap was $40,000. I wrote the check. Family helps family, I told myself, and I believed it the way you believe things you very much want to be true. 2 years ago, when he and Renee found the house in the new development out past the reservoir, the one with the open kitchen and the soaking tub she'd wanted, the down payment came up short. I covered the difference. $60,000, wired the morning of closing so the deal wouldn't fall through. They named the guest room Nan's room, and I cried a little, alone, in my own house, thinking that meant something. Last year, it was the private school for my granddaughter. The year before, a leased SUV when their old one died. A vacation to Cabo for our anniversary, Mom, you should come too, that I paid for and then sat through largely by the pool while they did couples things. Each one came wrapped the same way, small, casual, temporary, a little favor between people who love each other. I had stopped adding it up, honestly. You don't add up the things you do for your kids. That's the whole point of being a mother. You pour, and you tell yourself the pouring is the love. Standing in that steakhouse, I finally let myself add it up. And the number didn't matter half as much as one small thing I noticed. Renee had put her mother in the center, and she had put me by the window, and not one person in that room thought there was anything wrong with it. That was the moment something shifted. Not a flare of temper, more like a light coming on in a room I'd kept dark on purpose for years. I set the place card down on the white tablecloth. Carefully, the way you set down something you've decided you're finished holding. Margaret? Renee said, noticing me move. We're about to be seated. You're over there. She pointed with 2 fingers at the folding chair, the way you'd point a dog to its bed. I see it, I said, and I smiled. Not the warm smile. The other one, the one I used to give vendors right before I told them I'd be taking my business elsewhere. I picked up my purse from where I'd left it on a side console, and I stepped out of the gold light, out the side door of the private room, into the main dining floor of the restaurant where the regular dinner crowd was eating and the noise was good and ordinary. I didn't leave the building. Not yet. I just needed air that wasn't full of the smell of that room. I stood by a pillar near the bar, set my purse on a high-top table, and took up my phone. People assume a woman my age can't work a phone. I find that funny. When you've spent 3 decades doing the books for your own business, a banking app is not intimidating. I opened the restaurant's reservation in my email first, the confirmation, with the deposit and the card on file. My card. Then I opened the bank itself. For a second, I just looked at the screen. There's a voice that lives in women like me, a voice trained over a lifetime, and it spoke right up. Don't, Margaret. Don't cause a scene. Sit in the chair. Smile. Keep the peace. You've kept the peace for 68 years. What's one more night? I had listened to that voice when I wrote the 40,000. I had listened to it when I wired the 60. I had listened to it in Cabo by the pool. That voice had cost me more than I could fit on any screen. I stopped listening to it. I called the restaurant's front desk. I was standing 40 feet from the man who answered, watching him pick up. And I asked, very politely, to speak about the private room reservation under my name. I told him there had been a change. I told him I'd be settling and closing out the room's tab as it stood right now before the dinner service began, and that any food or beverage ordered after this moment would need to go on a different card, because mine was being removed from the file. He hesitated, the way they do. I gave him the confirmation number, the last 4 digits, the billing zip. I have signed enough documents to know how to make a request sound like a decision that's already been made. He said he understood. He said he understood. He said he'd need to let the party know that the card on file had been withdrawn. That would be appropriate, I said. It cost me a little. The deposit was non-refundable, and a couple of bottles had already been opened. $300 or so for the privilege. I have spent $300 on far worse things. I've spent it on people who put me by the window. Then I closed the app, picked up my purse, and walked toward the front of the restaurant, where the host stand was, and the door beyond it, and the cool spring evening outside. I didn't make it to the door. I was maybe halfway across the floor when I heard heels on the tile behind me, fast, and then Renee's voice, that bright, hard voice she used on people she'd decided were a problem. Margaret! Margaret, what did you do? I turned around. Brett was a few steps behind her, his phone in his hand, the manager's apologetic notification already glowing on it. Good evening, I said. The restaurant just told us the card on file was pulled, Renee said. Her voice was still controlled, but there was a wire under it now, pulled tight. They said the room can't proceed unless someone puts down a new card. Did you do this? I closed out the tab, I said pleasantly. It settled through this moment. Anything further is yours to arrange. Brett caught up, his easy smile flickering on and off like a bad bulb. Mom, come on. Whatever this is, let's not do it here. People are watching. Just come back in. Sit down. We'll figure it out. Sit down where? I asked. He blinked. You had a chair for me, I said. By the window. I'd hate to take a seat that's clearly meant for an actual guest. Renee's jaw tightened. It's a folding chair, Margaret. It's not an insult. The room was tight. Your mother is in the center, I said. The words landed in the air between us and just sat there, because there was nothing to do with them. Renee's mouth opened and closed. That's different, she said finally. It's exactly the same, I said. It's just that this time I was on the wrong side of it. A couple at a nearby table had stopped pretending not to listen. Brett noticed and dropped his voice. Mom, this is so embarrassing. Can we please, you use the word embarrassing, I said. That's interesting. I felt embarrassed about 4 minutes ago holding a place card with my name on it next to a metal chair. But I didn't say a word. I didn't make a scene. I went and quietly handled a billing matter. That's not a scene, Brett. That's just bookkeeping. Renee pulled out her own phone, thumbs moving fast. Fine. I'll just put it on my card. How much is the room? You'd have to ask them, I said. I only know what I already paid. She got the manager on the line. I watched her face as she heard the number. The full room minimum, the wine, the cake, the gratuity built in for a party of 18 at a steakhouse on a Saturday. I have seen that particular look before, on people doing math they didn't expect to do. Her expression went from irritation to something stiller. That's okay, she said into the phone, too brightly. Hold on. She lowered it and looked at Brett. It's almost 2,000, with the minimum and the wine. Brett's smile finally went out altogether. Just put it on the Amex, he said. The Amex is near the limit, she said low, like she'd forgotten I have very good hearing. I told you that last week, after the school payment. The school payment. My granddaughter's tuition. Funny. I'd assumed that was on my card too, the way it had been the year before. I didn't say so. I just stood there in the middle of the dining room and let the quiet do the work. Put it on the debit then, Brett said. Renee looked at him. A specific look, a look that told me, more than anything either of them had said all night, exactly how things actually stood in that beautiful house out past the reservoir. There's the mortgage auto draft Monday, she said. We talked about this. And there it was. The whole shining picture. The house, the SUV, the private school, the steakhouse with the gold lighting, wobbling on a card near its limit, and a checking account they were watching like a fuel gauge on empty. I had funded a life that could not on its own afford the dinner where I was assigned the folding chair. I felt no triumph. I want to be honest about that, because I think some of you are expecting me to say it felt good. It didn't feel good. It felt like watching something you'd loved for a long time and finally seeing it clearly in daylight. Brett, I said gently, can I ask you something? He looked at me wary now. When Renee put me by the window tonight, and she did, you both know she did it cross your mind, even for 1 second, that it might be unkind? He opened his mouth. Closed it. It's a chair, Mom, he said, but quietly, like he didn't fully believe it himself anymore. It was never about the chair, I said. My phone buzzed in my purse. I didn't have to look to know it was the family group thread lighting up, my sister-in-law probably, asking if everything was all right, somebody having texted somebody. I left it. Mom! Brett's voice changed, softer, the wire of panic threading into it now too. Mom, don't do this. Not over this. We can fix it. Come sit down. We'll move the chairs around. You can have the center, okay? Take Renee's mom's seat, I don't care. And do you know what undid me? Just a little. It was that. The offer. Take the center seat. As though the wound was the seat and the cure was a better seat, and if he just gave me a nicer chair, the whole thing would dissolve and we could go back to me paying for everything and saying thank you for the privilege. He still didn't understand. The chair was never the wound. The wound was that nobody in that room had hesitated. I don't want the center seat, I said. I want to go home. Margaret, Renee said, and her voice had dropped the brightness entirely now. There was something almost frightened in it, and I understood why. It wasn't me she was afraid of losing. Margaret, you can't just leave. People are coming. His friends are parking right now. What are we supposed to tell them? Tell them whatever's true, I said. You'll find it's harder than you think. I turned to go. And that's when Brett said the thing people always say, the thing that tells you they've heard the words but not the meaning. This is so unlike you, he said. You've never acted like this. I stopped. I looked at my son, 40 years old in a blazer I'd bought, standing in a restaurant I paid for, genuinely bewildered that the woman who always poured had finally set the pitcher down. "No," I said, "I never have. That's the whole problem, isn't it?" I walked out. The host held the door, said have a good night, with no idea what he was holding the door on. The spring air outside was cool and clean and smelled like rain coming, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment and just breathed it. My phone rang. I almost let it go. Then I saw the name and answered. Because of all the people tangled up in that gold-lit room, she was the only one who had never once asked me for a thing. Nan? My granddaughter. 16, sharp as a tack, the only person in that family who looked at me like I was a person and not an account. "Nan, where are you?" "Mom's freaking out. She says you left." "I did, sweetheart," I said. "I'm fine. I'm just outside." A pause. "Did something happen?" I thought about how to answer that. "Your mom put a folding chair by the window for me," I said, and put her mother in the center. Quiet on the line. Then, in a small voice, I saw the chair. "I was going to ask if you wanted to switch with me. I didn't get a chance before you." She stopped. "Nan, that wasn't right. I told her it wasn't right when she set it up. She said you wouldn't mind. She said you wouldn't mind. That, right there. That was the whole decade in 5 words. They had built an entire architecture of taking on the foundation of you wouldn't mind. And the terrible thing is, they were right. I never had. I'd swallowed every slight, written every check, sat by every pool, and called it love so I wouldn't have to call it what it was. "You're a good girl," I told her, and my voice caught a little. "Don't you ever let anyone seat you by the window. You hear me? Are you coming back?" "No, honey. Not tonight." "Okay," she said. And then, even smaller, "I'm glad you didn't sit in it." I stood on that sidewalk for a long time after we hung up. Through the front windows, I could see the warm light of the restaurant, the bustle of it, my son somewhere in the back of it trying to figure out how to pay for his own 40th birthday. People talk about freedom like it has to be loud. A door slammed, a speech given, a bridge burned in flames. You can see from the highway. But sometimes freedom is very quiet. Sometimes it's a woman in sensible shoes, standing on a sidewalk, declining for the first time in her life to be the one who fixes everything. The next morning, Brett called 4 times before I picked up. When I finally did, he didn't lead with an apology, which told me everything. He led with logistics. The restaurant, the friends who'd shown up to a half-canceled dinner, the awkwardness of it. How could I have done that to him in front of people? I let him talk himself out. Then I said the thing I'd been turning over half the night. "Brett, I'm going to keep loving you. That part isn't changing. But I'm done being the bank, the checks stop, the card comes off everything, the streaming, the phone plan, all of it. You're 40. You'll be all right." People are. Silence. Then, in a different voice, younger somehow, "Is this because of one chair?" "No, baby," I said, and I almost laughed because he still hadn't heard it. "It's because of every chair before it that I sat in without saying a word. I won't pretend it was clean after that." Renee didn't speak to me for 2 months. There were a couple of cold holidays. The house out past the reservoir, I later learned, went up for sale that summer. They bought something smaller, closer in, more honest about what they could carry. Brett got a real job, a salaried one, and the first time he told me about a raise instead of a shortfall, I heard something in his voice I hadn't heard since he was a boy. Pride. The kind you can only feel about a thing you actually did yourself. My granddaughter stayed close. She comes by on Sundays. She always sits right next to me every time, and she thinks I don't notice that she does it on purpose. I notice everything. I always have. That was never my problem. People ask me sometimes, the ones who hear this story, whether I regret it. $300 and a son who wouldn't speak to me for a season, all over a folding chair. And I tell them the same thing every time. I didn't lose anything that night that was real. I lost the version of my family that only worked as long as I paid for it. What I got back was harder to put a number on. I got to find out, finally, who would still pull a chair out for me when there was nothing left in it for them to take. A 16-year-old, as it turned out. Just one, but one was enough. So tell me, if you'd been standing in that gold-lit room holding a place card with your own name on it next to a folding chair, would you have sat down quietly the way I always used to, or would you have set it down and walked out into the cool night air? I really want to know. Tell me down in the comments, and if this story stirred something in you, you know what to do. The thing I keep coming back to is that nobody in that gold-lit room hesitated. Not Brett, not Renee, not a single guest. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because for 10 years I taught them, one quiet check at a time, that my comfort was the cheapest thing in the room. You cannot pour into people endlessly and then act surprised when they stop seeing the pouring. Cause and effect. I built the very habit that put me by that window, and the day I stopped funding it was the day the whole arrangement showed its true shape. I used to think being a good mother meant never saying no. I had that backwards. What I learned standing on that sidewalk in the cool spring air is that there's a difference between kindness and self-erasure, and I had spent decades confusing the two. Real decency isn't writing the check that keeps the peace at your own expense. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a grown child is let him feel the actual weight of his own life. Brett got a salaried job after that. The first time he told me about a raise instead of a shortfall, I heard pride in his voice, and I understood that my help had been quietly stealing that pride from him for years. It also took something I didn't know I still had. Walking out of that restaurant, with people watching and my own son calling it embarrassing, was harder than writing any check ever was. Anyone can keep the peace by giving in. It takes real backbone to disappoint the people you love, because the truth requires it. I had spent my whole life mistaking endurance for strength, when endurance was just the slow surrender I'd dressed up as devotion. But the part that matters most, the part I'd want my granddaughter Emma to carry, is this. Watch what people do when there's nothing left in it for them. Renee seated her own mother in the center and put me by the wall, and that told me precisely how she valued me. Emma, 16 years old. The only one who said it wasn't right. The only one who tried to switch chairs. She's the one who sits beside me every Sunday now on purpose when I have nothing left to give but my company. Pay attention to who pulls out a chair for you when your wallet is closed. That's the only test that has ever told me the truth about anyone. I'm 68. I lost a season with my son and gained him back as a man instead of a dependent. I lost $300 in a fragile, expensive version of my family, and what I got in return was the clear-eyed knowledge of who actually loves me. I'd make that trade again tomorrow. Respect was never something I could buy for them. It started the moment I finally believed I deserved it myself.